Like many at Williams, my time here has been a mixed bag. On the one hand, Williams has given me some of my greatest friends and teachers, the opportunity to travel the world and experience different ways of living, and the ability to see through layers of reality and history. It was here that I became an activist, or advocate, I'd say. On the other hand, it was also here that I encountered my greatest challenges to date. I do now appreciate these challenges because I believe they have made me a fuller human being, better able to understand others' realities because I've become more open to the wholeness of human life. But this level of empathy can be paralyzing. This last year has been especially difficult for me because my time at Williams will be, and has been, inextricably linked to my experience of the pain and anger of national and international tragedies. I remember sitting in the upstairs reading room in Presky last April, attempting to start some paper or other. It was already nighttime, so I was ensconced in my own little bubble of light amongst other little bubbles, alone together in the never-ending trudge of work that is the undergraduate experience. In the midst of what should have been just another day, another paper, another distracting scroll through my news feed, something broke. Something demanded expression. I saw the breaking news about the Nepal earthquake and couldn't help myself from absorbing, feeling, and witnessing, as much as I could from half a world away, all the destruction and pain and loss. This, on top of the destruction, pain, and loss brought onto the national stage by the Black Lives Matter movement and their insistence that the nation not look away, not ignore yet another unfairly untimely death of yet another human being with moments unlived left behind. At that point, I could not continue to simply hold the emotion inside. Overwhelmed, I started to cry and turn off my computer. My senior homecoming weekend will forever be tied to my experience of the student-led confrontations against structural racism at Mizzou, transferred across time and space to our very own Baxter Hall in a moment of solidarity, and both the intensity and controversy surrounding the Paris and Beirut attacks, all against the wider backdrop of constant wars, migration, fear, loss. Each new event multiplied the effects of the previous, further triggering already tensed and frayed nerves worn thin by background stresses. In the face of such meaningless suffering of innocence, the casualties, as well as those who felt they had no other option but violence, I could only find deep, heavy sorrow and directionless pain, looking not for a source of blame, but rather unable to find anything but victims. These moments struck me to my core. They unearthed questions I could not resolve. In this current context, what is the point and what is the end goal of social justice activism? The work will never end. Think just for a second, can you imagine America? America founded on slavery, sexism, xenophobia, imperialism, boundaries, hierarchy, difference, us, them. Can you imagine an America that is truly free and equal and human? Can you imagine freedom, equality, and humanity when these have never fully existed? I think it is important to work to improve living conditions and address inequalities and lacks, the symptoms of malaise. But work within the system is not designed to fundamentally change the system, to treat the root cause. When the world we live in is founded upon intentional structural inequity and hierarchy, when current logic fundamentally requires a binary of winners and losers, what does equity actually mean? What are the hidden costs that we refuse to see clearly, or worse, have collectively agreed to sacrifice in exchange for life as we know it? When I first encountered these questions, I turned to what I knew, how I've been trained to see the world, to science and rationality. I tried to reason, if we start with the assumption that humanity is essentially the same over time and place, even while its surrounding environments have dramatically changed, if there is something essentially human, then perhaps this need for hierarchy and competition, this inability to be completely open and selfless except in the face of some external threat, perhaps this is simply human nature. Perhaps humans are inherently bad and selfish and divided. This is a bleak conclusion. And based on my experiences with real people around the world, I think this is an untrue and thus unacceptable conclusion. Perhaps people are bad and selfish and divided, but they are also good and giving and supportive. Perhaps there is no singular human nature, but rather pluralities and paradoxes. Thus, the intellectual path proved a dead end. It could not rationalize away the inconvenient meaninglessness of tragedy. Instead, I turned to something that someone once said. I honestly don't even remember the speaker herself, but her words and spirit have stuck with me over time. When asked about her approach to combating racism, she said something like, "The only thing you can do in the face of racism and all the other oppressions is to do what you can. It doesn't matter if it's possible to solve the problem of racism or oppression, or whether you can imagine a reality without these chains. The important thing is to know that each step that you do take is a step that leads to something better, and then to keep building. It's this process, it's living what you believe that is truly important." And this felt right. This unraveled my sense of unease and stress and worry. This was revelatory in its simplicity, its reverberating calm. Take it slow, take it step by step, focus on just the next step, and it'll be okay. I've always loved to go against the mainstream and to question, but my time at Williams has lent urgency to challenging hegemony and status quo. Although I believe on the individual level there is no right way or better or worse way to live, rather, morality is not the appropriate way to understand people's choices. But there are ways of living that are more or less dehumanizing. There are ways of living that are less dominating and objectifying, that find value in all life and center the interconnections between lives, rather than an abstract monetary value or status. There are ways of living that fundamentally oppose hierarchical systems rather than simply redefining the composition of each step on the ladder. And while each of us faces different constraints on our choices, we do each have a choice. You can choose to instill your life with empathy, love, and relationality at the cost of hierarchy, privilege, and commercialization of life. I believe that these choices are infectious. Each little act or word can amplify and sustain courage, to imagine and fight towards an ideal that has never existed, to step forward, even when you can't see where your foot will land, and to make mistakes. We can create, in other words, a new faith in humanity. Despite my firm grounding in science, rationality, and atheism, as an advocate or activist, I find my work is unsustainable without faith. When I open myself up to the depth of empathy and passion that allows me to be successful, I also open myself up to intensely crippling emotions that make my work impossible. Faith, a complete trust and confidence built upon spirituality rather than proof, allows me to find confidence and courage within and beyond myself. Thus, advocating for a cause becomes a sort of sermon. Private discussions and debates become a version of prayer. Organizing with others becomes a public right. Faith makes action, courage, and experimentation possible. It is the only foundational defense against paralyzing fears. Is it even possible to dismantle oppressive systems? What would such a world look like? Is this the right way to do it? Would some other path have been better? Am I doing enough? Will my work have any meaning or impact? What does it mean to live a good life, successful life, and meaningful life in today's world? Faith grants me the courage to reply. If you believe it impossible, it truly will be impossible. And conversely, believing it possible is the first step. Either way, it doesn't really matter whether full societal revision is possible, because it's still worth fighting for a better reality, even if it isn't ideal. We can never know whether a different choice was better, because we can't go back in time. Thus, we can only trust our collective best judgment, based on honestly recognizing our triumphs and failures. Even though I am imperfect, it is enough that I actively do what I can, that I step up when I am able, because I trust that others will fill in the remainder. There's no right way to live life, no straight path to success or meaning, but you know that you have limited time. So what you choose to invest it in is a reflection of what you find meaningful. If you live a life in pursuit of your vision of a better world, maybe that's all we can ask for in life. I still don't know if this is the right answer or the only answer to truly anti-oppressive activism, but I know that for me, the embrace of faith, of unknowability, of something bigger than myself, of imperfection that is part of the journey, has been critical to moving forward. There may be no answers, but we cannot turn away from the hard questions, nor can we allow ourselves to be crippled by what we don't and can't know. I believe that embracing the possibility of failure and finding the courage and faith to take action anyway is the way forward. It is something that I, at least, will continue to practice and nurture. Thank you.